Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
We begin with politics and the biggest day on the presidential primary calendar. Voters in 16 states and one territory head to the polls on this Super Tuesday. Former President Donald Trump is expected to dominate, but his last Republican opponent, Nikki Haley, is making her stand in one of the biggest states in play tonight.
This is a choice between do you want more of the same or do you want something new?
Nikki Haley held a rally last night in Fort Worth, Texas. In all, 865 Republican delegates are up for grabs this evening. 1,215 are needed to clinch the nomination. Former President Trump picked up 29 more delegates last night in North Dakota, sweeping the state's caucuses with 84.6% of the North Dakota vote to Haley's 14.2%. Former President Trump currently has 273 delegates to Haley's 43.
Well, Nathan, while it appears we're headed for a Biden-Trump rematch, Republican strategist and owner of Red Wave Communications, David Kochel, thinks it'll be a very close race.
Latest round of polls, New York Times Siena poll in particular, has real concern among Democrats for Biden and whether or not he's going to be able to pull this off because, his net favorability is terrible. His job approval is way down. Trump's favorability is actually higher than Joe Biden's right now, which is kind of funny. We haven't seen that until, the last couple of years here. And I think this is going to be a real nail biter.
Republican strategist David Kochel made the comments in an interview with Bloomberg's Joe Matthew on balance of power. Tune in for special coverage of Super Tuesday beginning an hour after the first polls close. It all starts tonight at 8 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Karen, Donald Trump is going to be allowed to compete in today's Colorado primary. That's after the Supreme Court unanimously overturned the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to remove him under the Constitution's insurrection clause. The U.S. High Court ruled that states can't make that call. Former President Trump said the result was a milestone.
I think it's a very big day for America. I think it's a very big day for liberty, and I think it's just a great day for this country.
And while the decision was unanimous, the court's 3 liberal justices said the majority went too far in deciding the Constitution's insurrection clause can't be enforced without Congress passing a law first.
Well, another election news, Nathan. Today's California primary is turning out to be very interesting when it comes to the Senate race. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter reports from San Francisco.
The polling has really tightened up here in California's so-called jungle primary. The top 2 vote-getters, no matter which party, advance to the general in November. The man who presided over the first Trump impeachment, Adam Schiff, is running well ahead of Democratic contenders Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. But Schiff has spent money attacking GOP newcomer, former major leaguer Steve Garvey. Political strategists say it was thought out in advance to actually help Garvey and boost his name recognition. Democrats have had no problem winning Senate seats here over Republicans. Some polling now actually, though, has Garvey in the lead. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Turning to markets, futures are lower a day after stocks slipped from record highs. Sam Stovall, chief investment strategist at CFRA, says he would not be surprised to see a market pullback.
We're at that point right now where I think that we could end up digesting some of the recent gains, but I'm encouraged by the fact that we have never fallen back into a new bear market after recovering what we lost in the prior one.
CFRA's Sam Stovall says the next big event for markets comes tomorrow when Fed Chair Jay Powell begins semi-annual testimony before Congress.
Well, Nathan, Bitcoin's price is closing in on an all-time high, but in market value terms, the token already touched a record. According to data from CoinGecko, the market capitalization of Bitcoin reached $1.35 trillion, and that tops the peak of $1.28 trillion in November of 2021. That was the month the token jumped to just under $69,000, and checking Bitcoin right now, it's at $66,600.
In company news, Karen, disappointing iPhone sales for Apple in in China. Let's get the story now from Bloomberg's John Tucker. John?
And Nate, Counterpoint Research says iPhone sales in China fell an eye-opening 24% over the first 6 weeks of this year. Buyers may be turning to cheaper brands. The top market share went to Vivo, which targets the budget segment, with a handset accounts for more than half of Apple's sales. To stimulate demand, Apple even resorted to rare discounts on its web store in January. Apple fell below 16% market share from 19% a year ago, according to the researchers. Well, China government officials have asked their employees not to bring foreign devices like iPhones to work. Apple's share has fallen 9% since the start of the year, and it lost the title of world's most valuable company to Microsoft. The pre-market shares this morning down 1.5%. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thanks. Well, China is having an impact on another big U.S. company. Bloomberg has learned Advanced Micro Devices has hit a U.S. government roadblock in attempting to sell an artificial intelligence chip tailored for the Chinese market. Sources say AMD had hoped to gain a green light from the Commerce Department to sell the AI processor to Chinese customers. But U.S. officials told AMD that the chip was still too powerful and that the company must obtain a license from Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security in order to sell it. The stock is down more than 3% this morning.
Well, meanwhile, Karen, China has set its economic growth target for this year at around 5%. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
The target is the same as last year, but it may be more difficult to attain given the less favorable comparisons than last year. Authorities will issue 1 trillion yuan, or $139 billion of ultra-long special central government bonds. This is part of a ramp-up in fiscal stimulus, and it moves more debt to the central government away from the provinces. The budget deficit projected at 3% of GDP for 2024. Military spending up 7.2%. Markets turned up their noses a little on this, but it's still early. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Brian, thanks. And on the wealth front, for the first time in more than 9 months, Elon Musk is no longer the world's richest person. We get the details from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Musk lost his position atop the Bloomberg Billionaires Index to Jeff Bezos. Musk now has a net worth of $197.7 billion. Bezos' fortune is $200.3 billion. It is the first time that Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has topped Bloomberg's ranking of the richest people since 2021. The wealth gap between Musk and Bezos, which at one point was as wide as $142 billion, has been shrinking as Amazon and Tesla shares move in opposite directions. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Biden administration continues to push for a 6-week pause to the war in Gaza, as well as for Israel to stop blocking aid into the besieged enclave and for Hamas to release the remaining hostages held there. Meanwhile, the U.S. is planning to continue to airdrop supplies into Gaza. Bloomberg's Nancy Lyons with the latest.
The United Nations says a quarter of the 2.3 million people in Gaza face starvation. The Pentagon's Matt Miller says the U.S. started airdropping food into the region over the weekend and will continue distributing aid.
People are desperate for food, for water, for medicine. Parents are facing impossible choices about how to feed their children. Many don't know where the next meal will come from.
Miller says these airdrops are intended to supplement, not replace aid through other mechanisms. He says the U.S. is pressing Israel to open additional crossings and routes into Gaza. In Washington, Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul indicated she plans to increase the number of law enforcement officers in the city's subway system. The development comes after Hochul met with Mayor Eric Adams and the NYPD's chief of transit to find ways to put more state resources in the subway system. That is on top of the 1,000 extra NYPD officers in the subways.
Seeing more police on the platform, more cameras. As you know, I am the one who said that every single car has to have cameras on it. And because I kept pushing and not taking no for an answer, and that we can't do it for a few years, it'll all be done by the end of this year. We have over 2,000 trains that have cameras on them. And that has been very helpful in solving crimes, as well as the platforms. And I want make sure that every conductor's booth area has cameras as well.
The NYPD says the subway system has seen a rise in major crimes by more than 13% compared to the same time last year. President Joe Biden's administration is announcing a final rule curtailing credit card late fees. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau estimates its move to slash credit card late fees would save an average of $220 per year for 45 million people. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With the Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update, brought to you by Tri-State Audi. Here's John Stashauer.
Thanks, Nathan. The Rangers were the hottest team in hockey, reeling off 10 straight wins, but they've lost 3 of their last 4. The hottest team now, the Florida Panthers at the Garden. They made it 11 of the last 12. Sam Reinhart, 2 second-period goals, numbers 43 and 44 in the season. Panthers scored 2 more third period, beat the Rangers 4-2. Florida has the most points in the NHL, plays again tonight at New Jersey. The Devils now being coached by Travis Green, formerly the coach in Vancouver. He was an assistant to Lindy Ruff. He was just fired in his 4th season in Jersey. The Devils 30-27. They've lost 5 of their last 7. Bruins won 4-1 in Toronto. NBA, the Nets lost at home to Memphis 106-102. Wizards lost in Utah for Washington. That's 15 losses in a row. Yankees went to Jupiter, beat the Marlins 3-2. Clark Schmidt looks ready for the season. 4 scoreless innings, allowed only 1 hit. The ex-Met pitcher Zach Wheeler has flourished in Philadelphia, has now cashed in a year ahead of free agency. Wheeler gets a new deal with the Phillies for 3 years, $126 million. Speaking of Philadelphia, that's where Jason Kelce was yesterday, emotionally making his retirement official after 13 seasons as a fan favorite and anchoring the Eagles' offensive line.
I don't know what's next, but I look forward to the new challenges and opportunities that await, and I know that I carry with me the lessons from my time here, and that forever we shall all share the bond of being Philadelphians.
Next for Kelce may well be a broadcasting gig. What's next for Russell Wilson? Released by Denver after 2 lackluster seasons there, he becomes a 35-year-old free agent quarterback. You don't have to pay him much money because Wilson's assured of making $39 million for the Broncos. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Okay, John, thank you. We want to get right back to this marquee day in the presidential primary race. 16 states and 1 territory award delegates on this Super Tuesday, and it could be the day Donald Trump all but seals the deal for the Republican nomination. We are joined now by Greg Valliere, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist for AGF Investments. Greg, good morning. Do you see any states where it could be a contest today?
Not really, Nathan. Good morning. There will be states to watch, California, Texas, states like that. But frankly, I think the big story to watch is going to be what Nikki Haley does. She may be gone by the end of the week.
That is the big question. What will Nikki Haley do if, as expected, she doesn't win any states tonight?
Yeah, it's awfully hard to see her staying in. It's a battle, as you know, for delegates, and she's just doing very poorly on delegates. She can claim that, 30% of the party likes her and would vote for her, but that is not going to get her the nomination.
It might not get her the nomination, Greg, but it does raise the question of where those 30% of votes that went for Nikki Haley go. Does former President Trump reach out in some way to those voters?
Yes, I think one of the surprises of the spring will be that Trump is more conciliatory with Republicans who don't like him. I think he's shrewd enough to realize their votes are really important. So I think that Haley will probably offer a half-hearted endorsement of Trump, but even that I think could make a difference in the suburban voters in Pennsylvania, moderates in Pennsylvania. So there's high stakes in what she does.
There would be interesting if she did give even a half-hearted endorsement, because as we heard over the weekend, she's hinting that she might not stick to her RNC pledge to endorse the eventual nominee. Could Nikki Haley continue to be something of a gadfly in this race, even if she doesn't go on from here?
She could, but I think her focus is going to shift rapidly to the 2028 primary. I know that's a long way off. We haven't even had these primaries, but I think that she would realize, as Ronald Reagan did, by the way, in 1976. Reagan said, all right, I'm not going to run, and then he waited until 1980 and he won the presidency. And she's young. She'd be 55, 56 during the 2028 primaries. I think she will start thinking that that could be her real opportunity.
If this does turn out to be a decisive night, it's going to set up the longest general election contest in recent memory for a rematch that the polls show most Americans don't want. What could that mean for the fatigue factor heading into November?
It's a good point, Nathan. I have lots of friends in Canada, and I tell them I'm jealous because their campaigns last about 6 weeks, which seems normal, unlike what we have. So, yes, there could be fatigue. There could be speculation about, maybe a long-shot third-party candidate like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but it's these two guys. I don't see anyone else really changing the outlook.
And when it comes to the Democratic primary, are you looking for any potential warning signs for President Biden in this Super Tuesday like we saw from Michigan last week?
Could be. Good point. I think that there could be more states that have uncommitted. That embarrasses the White House. It highlights the controversy over the Israeli war with Hamas, and it's an added annoyance that that Biden does not need.
And how could this set up the State of the Union address that we're going to get on Thursday night? Got about 30 seconds left.
Sure. This address is going to require Joe Biden to be flawless. No gaffes, no stumbling. It's got to be a flawless address because if it's not, his ratings could go down even more.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.